At Veit, we are committed to maintaining a safe and healthy workplace culture. This portion of your orientation will cover Veit's health and safety goals, as well as the objectives in place to achieve them. The first thing that will be covered in the safety orientation is Veit's non-DOT drug and alcohol policy. Then, if applicable, the DOT drug and alcohol policy will be covered. Third, Veit's commitment to safety will be explained. And fourth, Veit's on-the-job standards will be reviewed. The orientation will wrap up with a welcome from Veit's Safety Department. Veit's non-DOT drug and alcohol policy. Veit is committed to maintaining a safe, healthful, and efficient working environment for all its employees. Veit recognizes that safety problems are created when employees use controlled substances and/or abuse alcohol. The presence or use of alcohol and drugs in the workplace and the influence of those substances on employees during working hours has the potential to pose serious safety and health risks to both the user and to those who work with him or her. Impairment by drugs and alcohol threatens everyone's safety and the success of our operations. Veit will not accept any risk to safety, quality, or productivity that may be caused by an employee who uses drugs and/or abuses alcohol. Because even a small amount of such substances may be capable of impairing the individual to some degree, it is a Veit goal through this drug and alcohol program to achieve a workplace that is free of drugs and alcohol. The non-DOT drug and alcohol policy covers all applicants and current employees, including full-time and part-time. Employees such as CDL drivers are first and foremost covered by Veit's DOT drug and alcohol policy. However, this policy would apply when not working in a DOT capacity. This policy does not constitute an employment contract or offer. Veit's non-DOT drug and alcohol policy includes the following rules of conduct. It is strictly prohibited to use, sell, purchase, manufacture, possess, or transfer any illegal drug or be under the influence of alcohol during work hours, including breaks, while on company business, while on company or customer properties, or while operating a company vehicle, machine, or equipment. Veit reserves the right to search employees' personal effects or vehicles when on company property or work sites if a reasonable suspicion is determined by a trained supervisor or manager. Where necessary, situations may be referred to local law enforcement. Such behavior will lead to immediate disciplinary action up to and including termination. Use of legal drugs that may impair or negatively impact an employee's performance and/or affect the safety of others is strictly prohibited. Speak with your medical provider to determine if the medication may affect your safety or job performance. If, after consulting with a medical provider, it is determined that the medication will negatively affect your ability to safely perform your job, consult with a Veit safety manager prior to your next shift to discuss possible accommodations. Failure to follow this process may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination. Drug and alcohol testing will take place under the following conditions. Pre-employment testing. Veit requires all newly hired employees to be free of illegal drug use. Every job offer is conditioned upon a negative drug test. If an applicant refuses to be tested or makes any effort to alter the specimen or collection, the conditional job offer will be withdrawn. Reasonable suspicion testing. If a trained supervisor or manager determines that an employee is under the influence and/or has violated Veit's rules of conduct, the employee will be referred for drug and/or alcohol testing. If an employee refuses to be tested or makes any effort to alter the specimen or collection, Veit will consider the employee to have voluntarily resigned from their position. Post-accident testing. If an employee has, knowingly or unknowingly, sustained or has caused another employee to sustain personal injury in the course of employment, or has, knowingly or unknowingly, caused or contributed to a work-related accident, or was helping to operate machinery, equipment, or vehicles involved in a work-related accident, the employee may be tested for drugs and alcohol. If an employee refuses to be tested or makes any effort to alter the specimen or collection, Veit will consider the employee to have voluntarily resigned from their position. Random testing. Employees in a safety-sensitive position are subject to quarterly random selections for drug and alcohol testing. Random selections are made by a third party based on a percentage of employees currently working. If an employee refuses to be tested or makes any effort to alter the specimen or collection, Veit will consider the employee to have voluntarily resigned from their position. Treatment program testing. An employee who is referred for chemical dependency assessment or treatment because of a positive drug and/or alcohol test will be subject to return to duty testing and random follow-up testing. Return to duty testing is the financial responsibility of the employee. Follow-up testing is determined by the substance abuse professional that did the assessment and/or treatment. Consequences of positive test results. Applicants and employees can request a confirmatory retest be performed if the results show a positive result. The applicant or employee is responsible for the cost of the retest. Refer to Veit's non-DOT drug and alcohol policy for further information. If an applicant's confirmatory test is positive and a confirmatory retest is also positive or is not requested, the applicant's job offer will be withdrawn. The applicant will be ineligible for employment for a minimum period of 2 years from the date of the confirmatory positive result. If an employee's confirmatory test is positive and a confirmatory retest is also positive or is not requested, the employee will be immediately removed from all safety-sensitive functions. The employee will meet with Veit's safety coordinator and director of human resources to discuss the next steps of continuing employment with Veit, including, but not limited to, a substance abuse assessment and counseling. The cost of an assessment and counseling through Veit's EAP is at no expense to the employee, only when the testing is done in accordance with this non-DOT policy. Veit encourages those who wish to voluntarily seek assistance for questions of problems related to drugs and alcohol to do so by contacting Community Resources or Veit's company-sponsored Employee Assistance Program, or EAP, at 800-383-1908. Employees may also contact the United Way's First Call for Help at 800-543-7709 or by dialing 211, which is a Twin Cities resource for identifying assessment and rehabilitation resources for persons with drug and alcohol-related problems. SAMHSA offers a 24/7 help at their national hotline at 800-662-HELP or 4357. In addition, Veit will periodically distribute resource materials related to problems with drugs and alcohol. Employees who need additional information regarding help and assistance may bring questions directly to a safety manager. All information acquired in the drug and alcohol testing process, including but not limited to the results of an employee's drug or alcohol test and/or information regarding a treatment program, will be kept in secured files, separate from personnel files, and will be held in confidence. Disclosure will be limited to members of Veit management who Veit believes must be aware of this information. Unless otherwise permitted or required by law, Veit will not disclose this information to any other employer, individual, or organization without the applicant's or employee's written consent. At this time, please sign the Acknowledgement Form and Consent for Drug and Alcohol Testing form. Our commitment to safety. A job hazard analysis, or JHA, is a required daily meeting that is held before the start of your shift. A JHA is a safety meeting intended to outline the day's tasks and any potential hazards associated with them. JHAs are completed on the job site on a foreman's iPad. Examples of possible topics include specific work assignments including planned workflow, PPE requirements, site-specific hazards, emergency response procedures. A JHA is a perfect opportunity to ask job-specific questions. Also, the Safety Champion's observations from the previous day should be addressed, including any positive or negative takeaways from the previous day's work. During the JHA, a Safety Champion is assigned from the crew. The Safety Champion's task for the day is to complete a written safety observation based on the day's work. Each employee can put a link to HCSS on their smartphones so that they can complete their own observations. Please scan the QR code to access the HCSS program. Veit has elected to implement a stretching program for every job site. The stretching program should be included in the JHA. Stretching is a great way to increase blood flow, warm up cold and tired muscles to reduce injuries, improve individual posture, and increase the body's range of motion. It is the policy of Veit to empower all employees to stop work if they feel they are in an unsafe work environment. This allows any employee to address their concern with a supervisor regarding potential unsafe conditions without fear of reprisal. As a Veit employee, you have the authority and obligation to stop any task or operation where concerns or questions regarding the control of a risk exist. The purpose of the Stop Work program is to make sure that the identified safety concerns are addressed to the satisfaction of all involved prior to resuming work. Most issues should be able to be resolved at the job site. On occasion, additional investigation and corrective actions may be required to identify and address root causes. Personal protective equipment. Veit provides all field employees with a minimum of a hard hat, ANSI Class II safety vest, and safety glasses. Depending on the type of work that you will be performing and/or the project that you will be working on, Veit may also provide you with hearing protection, goggles, face shields, welding hoods, fall protection, and other protection for your feet, hands, and clothing. Your supervisor or safety manager will ensure that you receive the proper PPE for the work that you will be performing. At a minimum, you are expected to wear a hard hat, ANSI Class II safety vest, work boots, and safety glasses on the job site at all times. PPE reimbursement policy. All Veit employees are eligible for reimbursement for a portion of the purchase price of personal protection equipment after being employed for 90 days. Reimbursement requests should be sent to the Safety Department on a completed Veit expense report, approved by your supervisor, and include a copy of a sales receipt and proof that the item meets the specifications of the PPE policy. Prescription safety glasses are reimbursable up to $100 every 2 years from the date of the receipt. You must provide a proof of a current and valid prescription, a receipt for the purchase, and proof that the glasses follow the current ANSI standard. Safety-toed work boots are reimbursable up to $50 every 1 year from the date of last reimbursement. You must provide proof that the boot is leather, covers the ankle, and has a steel or composite toe, in addition to the sales receipt for the purchase. If you are interested in a reimbursement on your PPE, please consult your supervisor or safety manager for more information. On-the-job safety standards. Veit driving standards. Driving is a daily function that most of us take for granted, both personally and in the work environment. However, statistics show that operating a motor vehicle is one of the most hazardous activities that we undertake today. As the number of vehicles on roads and highways dramatically increases, we must consider our personal driving habits and other drivers' actions. Employees assigned Veit company vehicles or who regularly operate personal vehicles for company-related business purposes are expected to abide by these basic principles. First, comply with all state and federal traffic laws. Second, never operate a vehicle while under the influence of alcohol or controlled substances. Third, be courteous to other drivers and pedestrians. Fourth, avoid distractions. Do not use handheld devices. You are only allowed to press one button to make or answer a call. Pull off the road if you need to use a cell phone other than one-touch use. And fifth, always maintain a safe following distance. Use the 3-second rule. Pick out a marker and count from the moment the vehicle in front of you passes it until you pass it. If it is less than 3 seconds, you are following too close. If road conditions are poor, increase the distance. Report accidents, damages, moving violations, and equipment problems immediately. Accidents and damages must be reported to your supervisor. Moving violations must be reported to your supervisor and the driver safety manager. Heavy vehicle equipment problems should be reported to the truck fleet manager. Light vehicle equipment problems should be reported to the mechanic shop. License and medical cards must be kept up to date. DOT drivers should send licenses and medical card renewers to the driver safety manager. When in doubt, yield the right of way. Incident reporting. To ensure the safety of you and all Veit employees, vendors, and customers, Veit requires that each injury and near miss be reported. Please report all incidents to your supervisor, no matter how minor they may seem. Examples of incidents include, but are not limited to, all injuries, property damage caused by Veit or others, all equipment damage caused by Veit or others, and theft. All injuries will be assessed by the on-site supervisor and/or safety manager to determine what type of treatment is required. Job sites are equipped with first aid kits for minor injuries. When needed, Veit provides access to a telehealth service called Work Partners. Work Partners allows Veit supervisors and/or safety managers to get personalized, evidence-based medical advice and direction for injured employees from any job site. When working 6 feet or more above ground, workers must be protected by a guardrail system, positioning system, fall restraint system, or fall arrest system. All forms of fall protection must be inspected prior to use. Common pieces of fall protection include a full body harness, shock absorbing lanyard, self-retracting lines, rope and cable grabs, carabiners, and cross-arm straps. A typical fall arrest arrangement is shown here and consists of an anchorage connector, full body harness, and shock absorbing lanyard. It is important that the anchorage connector is attached to a suitable and strong attachment point to ensure your safety. Personal fall arrest systems must be rigged so that an employee can neither free fall more than 6 feet or contact any level below, bring an employee to a complete stop and limit the maximum deceleration distance that an employee travels to 3.5 feet, be capable of supporting 5,000 pounds at the anchorage point, and always have a rescue plan. Hole covers are required for openings in floors and walls. The hole cover must be secured so that it is not easily dislodged by being kicked from vehicle movement or anything else. The hole cover must be labeled with the words hole or cover. Also, the hole cover must be capable of carrying the weight of 200 human pounds or 2 times the intended load when it comes to machinery. When employees are to be exposed to dust, mist, gases, vapors, or fumes at or beyond OSHA's permissible exposure limits, and administrative and engineering controls are not effective, respiratory protection must be used. All employees using respiratory protection must have a medical authorization to do so. Veit will schedule and pay for the medical examinations required, as frequently or as necessary to meet medical and/or OSHA requirements. All employees must be trained on how to use their respiratory equipment. This includes inspection prior to each use, positive and negative fit checks each time worn, and regular cleaning. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, more than 1 million workers experience back injuries each year. Lower back pain is one of the most common reasons that people miss work. Most importantly, a back injury causes unnecessary discomfort and pain to workers and can greatly affect their lifestyle and/or ability to work. Back injuries can be caused by accidents or improper lifting techniques. Veit handles and moves a variety of materials such as brick, concrete debris, metals, and a variety of soils. Some material may require special handling and special equipment. Here are some tips to lift safely and avoid back injuries. Work smart. Stretch your back and legs prior to any lifting task. This helps to warm up your body to improve performance and reduce the risk of injury. Know what you're lifting. Prior to lifting, know what you are lifting and how to lift it. Be aware of the weight of the object to be lifted. If possible, make sure the work area is flat, dry, and clear of debris. Mechanical lifting equipment. Mechanical lifting equipment such as a forklift, pallet jack, skid loader, crane hoist, or lifting straps are useful for lifting. You must be properly trained to use mechanical lifting equipment. Lifting procedures. Ask for assistance when lifting heavy or awkward objects. Balance the object by keeping load close to your body. Lift with your legs and keep your back straight. Remember, the object may be heavier than it appears. Other things to consider. Do not rely on a back belt to protect you. Pace yourself, take breaks between lifts, and if strain occurs, give your muscles a chance to rest and heal. Continue to stretch throughout the day. Confined spaces are those spaces that are large enough to enter and perform work, but have a limited means of entry and exit. Confined spaces are not designed for continuous worker occupancy. Examples of confined spaces that Veit employees may enter include sewers, manholes, vaults, tanks, silos, excavations, pits, ducts, or tunnels. A permit-required confined space is a confined space that has one or more of the following characteristics. It contains or has a potential to contain a hazardous atmosphere. It contains a material that has the potential for engulfing an entrant, such as water or grain. It has an internal configuration such that an entrant could become trapped or asphyxiated. Or it contains any other serious safety or health hazard. Some of the hazards a Veit employee may encounter in a confined space include a changed oxygen content. The normal oxygen content is 20.9% in the air. If the oxygen content falls below 19.5%, you are in an oxygen deficient situation and may not be able to breathe very well. If oxygen increases to 23.5%, the atmosphere is oxygen enriched and at risk of flammability. Other hazards include toxic gases, flammable gases, electrical, entanglement, and engulfment. Some additional items to remember when working with confined spaces are: only trained and authorized personnel can enter a confined space. Always complete an entry permit. Test the atmosphere. Ventilate if necessary. Use the appropriate PPE for the job. Remember to use lockout tagout if necessary. Ensure that a person is designated to watch the whole of the confined space, and always have a rescue plan in place. Operators of heavy earth-moving equipment and those exposed to these operations, regardless of how frequently exposed, must be well trained on safe work procedures and recognizing unsafe or potentially unsafe conditions. Regular training is provided by those who are considered competent persons by Veit on safe work procedures when operating mobile earth-moving equipment. It is essential that operators understand and follow manufacturer recommendations for the safe operation of the equipment. Operators must do this to ensure the safety of the operator and other workers on the job site. It is important to remember some of the potential hazards of mobile earth-moving equipment on a job site. Operators who are not trained or competent can cause significant accidents or employee injuries. Being caught between or struck by equipment, falling while entering or exiting, poor equipment maintenance, and failing to observe necessary safety precautions are just some examples of the risks and hazards of mobile earth-moving equipment. Serious injury or death can occur from explosions and/or electrocution if contact is made with overhead or underground utilities such as electricity or gas. Unearthed soil can contain contaminants that may be hazardous to your health. Practicing safe actions on the job site is important for the health and safety of all when working with or near mobile earth-moving equipment. Do's and don'ts of mobile earth-moving equipment. Do's. Equipment should be inspected prior to use and should be serviced regularly by a trained professional. Most heavy equipment is required to have a rollover protection structure, or ROPS, so make sure that the equipment is properly equipped. Know your surroundings before moving the equipment, such as blind spots, nearby workers, edges of cuts or fills, and dead branches. Maintain visibility with a mobile earth-moving operator by visual or vocal communication, including but not limited to wearing the required high visibility vest provided at orientation. Use flashing lights when on an active road, headlights and tail lights when operating in low light, and a signal person if applicable. Make sure attachments are lowered, machine is in neutral, and brakes are set before exiting or dismounting equipment. Shut off equipment before fueling or making repairs. Hold a contractor employee safety awareness meeting when mobile earth-moving equipment is exposed to other contractors' employees. Don'ts. Never leave a machine on an incline with an engine running. And no riders. A competent person is required at all Veit excavation sites and must be capable of identifying any hazards associated with excavations and has the authority to take corrective actions. As you have previously learned, all employees can and should stop unsafe work. Veit only uses Type C criteria for sloping. All sloping must be at a 1.5 to 1 or greater. If a Type C slope is not possible on a specific project, any other protection system must be cleared by the General Superintendent and Veit Safety Department. Types of protective systems that OSHA allows include sloping, benching, trench boxes, and shoring. Other common hazards associated with excavating and trenching include: beware of overhead and underground utilities. All underground and overhead utilities should be positively identified before any digging is performed. A ramp or a ladder must be within 25 feet of any worker within a trench. Be sure to use protective equipment, such as barricades and orange fencing, around the excavation or trenching to ensure that equipment or any other traffic does not fall into the trench or excavation. Spoil piles and other materials must be kept at a minimum of 2 feet from the edge of a trench. Cranes, hoisting, and rigging. Cranes are the most hazardous piece of equipment on a job site if used improperly. Data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics indicates that the #1 reason for fatalities involving cranes is due to being struck by an object or equipment. Always be aware of where a load is and never walk underneath one. Here are a few things to remember when working on a job site with a crane. Cranes must be set up on solid, level surfaces. Use crane mats to distribute the weight if needed. The swing radius must be delineated. Stay away from power lines. Maintain a minimum 20 feet of clearance from overhead power lines. If power lines are in the work area, a plan must be developed in collaboration with the safety department that follows Table A. Any personnel who are not involved in hoisting operations must maintain a safe distance from the crane. To operate a crane for Veit, operators must be certified. Operators must possess an NCCCO certification have experience, and be able to demonstrate competency in the task of crane operation. The competency will be evaluated by Veit. Riggers and/or signal persons must be qualified or certified to assist with crane operations. All rigging components must be inspected prior to each pick, and any damaged rigging must be immediately taken out of service. All rigging must have legible capacity tags, shackles, and a stamp indicating the capacity and manufacturer. Tag lines must also be used with every load. Signals must be agreed upon by the operator, signal person, and supervisor. Standard signals should be used on the crane or job site. Always maintain clear visual and/or voice communications while signaling. Torch and fire safety. A hazard that can be encountered anywhere is fire. Understanding the components of a fire, fire types, extinguisher types, and the proper way to extinguish a fire are essential. Here is an example of a fire triangle. There are 3 components that are needed to create a fire: oxygen, heat, and fuel. Removing one or more of these components will cause the fire to go out. There are 4 types of fires. Class A includes typical combustibles like wood or paper. Class B are flammable liquids like petroleum products and solvents. Class C are electrical fires. And Class D are metals fires. Each fire extinguisher should have a label that designates the fire it is intended to be used for. Water is not the best solution for all fires. For example, using a water extinguisher on a Class B or C fire can be very dangerous. When attempting to extinguish a fire, it is important that you are confident you can put the fire out. Always fight a fire with your back toward the exit route. Fire extinguishers are intended for small fires and are only meant to last about 10 seconds. Operating a fire extinguisher is simple. Use the pass method when using a fire extinguisher. Pull the pin when holding the nozzle away from you and release the locking mechanism. Aim low, pointing the nozzle at the base of the fire. Squeeze the lever slowly and evenly, and sweep the nozzle from side to side at the base of the fire. If the fire has grown too large or is beyond its original confined space, if your escape route is impacted, or if you are unsure if you have the correct fire extinguisher, abandon the fire, get everyone to safety, and call 911. Other hazards to consider when dealing with a fire are smoke inhalation and potential noxious fumes. All employees are responsible for fire safety. Here are some ways you can prevent fires. Keep your work area clean and free of clutter. Know the proper storage and handling of chemicals. And familiarize yourself with the emergency action plan for your workplace, job site, and home. Flammable and combustible liquid storage. Flammable and combustible liquids include gasoline, diesel, solvents, etc. No more than 25 gallons of a flammable or combustible liquid can be stored outside of an approved safety cabinet. These liquids must be stored in their original container or can be stored in an approved metal safety can. The approved safety can must have a self-closing lid and a spark arrestor. Hot work jobs such as welding, burning, brazing, propane soldering, oxyacetylene cutting, and grinding ferrous metals are required to have a hot work permit before the work begins. Permits are issued for a specific job during a specific time frame and to a specific person. Ensure that all necessary equipment is on site and in good working order before beginning work. A fire watch is required for the duration of the work and must continue for at least 30 minutes after the work is done. The person doing the hot work must conduct a fire inspection before leaving the job site. Hot work permits should be returned to the person issuing them once the work is complete. Scaffolding and staging account for approximately 1/4 of fatal falls in the U.S. annually, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. It is important that the scaffolding be assembled and disassembled with the supervision of a competent person. Scaffolding must be tagged and inspected before each use and daily. Scaffolding must be plumb, level, and stable. Scaffolding should consist of guardrails, toe boards, and a ladder. Ladders. When working from a step ladder, always maintain a 3-point contact position and make sure it is secure. The center of your body should never extend past the outside rail of the ladder. Extension ladders must be secured and extend 3 feet past the landing. Before use, inspect ladders to ensure that side rails are not cracked and rungs are not bent. Also, ensure that all ladders have a warning label that is legible. If the label is not legible, it should be replaced as soon as possible. Lead, asbestos, and dust. Lead is a heavy metal that can threaten the health of workers in many occupations. Lead can be inhaled or swallowed, and repeated exposure can be toxic to your health. It is important to remember these helpful tips when working on a project with lead. Always use the right respirator for the job. If you are unsure, speak to your safety manager as soon as possible. Keep your worksite clean. Use only a vacuum with a HEPA filter or use wet cleaning methods when removing lead dust. Never use compressed air. Use protective clothing. Keep your street clothes separate from your work clothes. Never wear contaminated clothing home. And if available, use an exhaust ventilation system. Asbestos is a natural mineral fiber that has been used in many building materials. Asbestos is typically inhaled and can lead to many serious health problems, especially when combined with smoking. Veit employees who may be potentially exposed to asbestos must be trained on asbestos awareness. Airborne dust can be created when cutting or breaking concrete or similar materials. Inhalation of such dust can contribute to and/or lead to serious health problems. When working on a job site with airborne dusts or crystalline silica, remember, use a respirator when other controls do not offer sufficient protection. Use water to suppress dust. Wet methods should be used when cutting or breaking material. Water can help suppress dust on roadways or in work areas. Stay away from high dust areas and avoid working downwind. Remind operators of equipment and trucks to keep speeds down if there are dusty conditions on site. OSHA's permissible exposure limit, or PEL, is 50 micrograms per cubic meter air, calculated as an 8-hour TWA. The exposure of each employee who is or is expected to be exposed to respirable silica at or above the action level must be assessed. The assessment can be performed by monitoring employees individually, taking a representative sample from employees, or air monitoring. A list of tasks in the workplace that expose employees to respirable crystalline silica has been documented. Veit will use Table 1 in the OSHA Silica Standard to calculate engineering and work practice controls and respiratory needs. Veit will provide PPE when exposure exceeds OSHA's silica exposure limits. The following personal hygiene practices are essential for protecting workers from respirable crystalline silica and other contaminants. First, do not eat, drink, or use tobacco products in the dust areas. Second, wash hands and face before eating, drinking, or smoking outside of dusty areas. And third, change into disposable or washable work clothes at the work site. Veit provides a training program for all employees who are exposed to action-level respirable crystalline silica. Veit has established medical surveillance programs for employees who are exposed to the action level of 8-hour TWA of 25 micrograms per cubic meter air of respirable crystalline silica. Lockout-tagout is a set of procedural guidelines meant to ensure employees' protection against inadvertent operations of energized electrical circuits, steam and water, performing work on motor-driven electrical or pressurized equipment, compressed air or gases, and mechanical energy. In a lockout-tagout procedure, there are reasons to create energy isolation. Before Veit employees work on or near an energy source, it is important to ensure that the energy source is deactivated or isolated. Ways to do this include turning off the main power source, closing valves, and shutdown of hydraulic, pneumatic, air tension systems. Before an authorized or affected employee turns off a machine or equipment, the authorized employee shall have knowledge of the type and magnitude of the energy, the hazards of the energy to be controlled, and the methods or means to control the energy. The following procedure sequence should be followed when Veit personnel must be involved in a lockout/tagout operation. First, alert the operator or operators that the power is being disconnected. Second, prepare for the shutdown. Third, shut down the equipment according to the manufacturer's instructions. Fourth, isolate the equipment from its energy source. And finally, apply lockout devices when it is verified that equipment is isolated and stored energy is controlled. When removing a lockout, remove unnecessary tools from the work area and make sure everyone is clear of the equipment. Then, remove lockout/tagout devices and re-energize the system. As soon as the energy is no longer needed, repeat the steps of a lockout/tagout operation. If equipment needs to be temporarily reactivated, first, ensure that the equipment is safe to operate and safeguard all employees in the area. Then, the lockout/tagout devices can be removed by the person who placed them. It is only acceptable for a lockout/tagout to be removed by another person when an emergency requires it. Finally, follow the steps previously provided to reactivate the equipment. If the energy source cannot be isolated, place a tag at the point of operation or startup that warns employees not to operate it. Hazard communication. It is important that each Veit employee understand the hazards of the chemicals that they will be working with. To understand the hazards of each chemical used, container labeling, safety data sheets, and employee training has been implemented. Each container of hazardous chemical entering the workplace must be labeled with the identity of the chemical, appropriate hazard warnings, and the name and address of the responsible party. Veit has updated our hazard communication to meet the requirements of the Globally Harmonized System of Classification and Labeling of Chemicals, or GHS. This method of hazard communication requires pictograms and hazard warnings be used on the labels, such as those shown here. Safety data sheets, or SDSs, are product information sheets prepared by the chemical manufacturer or the importer of the product. The SDS includes 16 areas of information, such as the properties of each chemical, the physical health and environmental health hazards, protective measures, and safety precautions for handling, storing, and transporting the chemical. It is important to familiarize yourself with the emergency and first aid procedures in case something happens on the job site. Veit utilizes SDS Access by DeMarco Solutions to handle our SDS sheets. This is an online database of the chemicals used at Veit. Each job site has a field binder that contains SDSs specific to that job. The Hazardous Materials Identification System, or HMIS, and the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, system are color-coded labeling systems for identifying the hazards of chemicals. The HMIS is intended for everyday safety, whereas the NFPA is intended for emergency situations, especially fires. It is important that all Veit employees working with chemical familiarize themselves with these identification systems. Both systems use a color-coded and numerical system to identify the hazards and reactivity of the chemical. The NFPA system is a diamond shape, and the HMIS system is a rectangle. The blue area indicates a health hazard. The red area indicates a fire hazard. The yellow indicates reactivity. The level of hazard is ranked from 0 to 4. A 0 in these areas indicate no hazard, and a 4 indicates a severe hazard. The white area of these labels indicates a specific hazard on the NFPA label and the personal protection equipment required on the HMIS label. Electrical safety. Always inspect electrical cords and tools for defects prior to use. Check extension cords to confirm that they have a ground plug and/or that it is not missing. When using a power tool with a 2-wire power cord, make sure that the cord is double insulated. If an electrical item is defective, take it out of service immediately. Repairs should be done only by a qualified electrician and should never be repaired in the field by the employee. When using electricity in the field, you must use a ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI. Any temporary power in the field must be grounded. This concludes the safety portion of your orientation. We encourage you to ask your job site superintendent or foreman who the safety manager is for your group. We are here to help with any safety-related questions or concerns that you may have. From all of us in the safety department, welcome to Veit, and we look forward to working with you.